What if the retirement plans you've been counting on for years could be affected by new visa rules in Australia for 2026? Before you make any decisions about relocating, staying long-term, or planning your future as an expat retiree, there are critical changes and hidden details you need to understand that many people are completely missing. In today's video, we'll break down what these new retirement visa developments could mean, who may be impacted, and the key facts you should know before it's too late. And if you're someone who cares about retirement, age pension updates, payment schedules, and the latest pension issues affecting Australians and expats, make sure to subscribe and join our community. We regularly share timely information and practical insights designed specifically for people who want to stay informed and protect their retirement plans. Imagine this. You have spent the better part of your working life dreaming about your golden years. The slow mornings, the sunshine, the sound of waves crashing somewhere impossibly beautiful. And somewhere along the way, Australia planted itself firmly at the top of your list. The golden beaches, the laid-back culture, the world-class healthcare, the food scene that somehow manages to be both relaxed and extraordinary. It all adds up to something that sounds, honestly, like the perfect retirement. But here is the thing that nobody tells you up front. The thing that sends thousands of hopeful retirees back to the drawing board every single year. Australia does not have a straightforward retirement visa. Not anymore. And if you are planning to retire there in 2026, you need to understand exactly what has changed, what your real options are, and what it is going to cost you, because the landscape has shifted dramatically, and the old rules no longer apply. Let's start at the very beginning, because to understand where things stand today, you need to know a little bit of history. Australia once had two dedicated retirement visas. The first was the retirement visa, known officially as Subclass 410, which was designed for retirees aged 55 and older who wanted to live in Australia temporarily alongside their partners without needing to rely on public funds. The second was the investor retirement visa, the Subclass 405, which was tailored specifically for self-funded retirees who had no financial dependence and were willing to make a designated investment in Australia in exchange for the right to live there. For years, these two pathways were the go-to options for expats dreaming of an Australian retirement. They were imperfect, they were temporary rather than permanent, and they came with their own set of conditions and costs. But they existed. They gave people a route. And then, quietly but decisively, the Australian government closed the door. The closure did not happen overnight. The announcement came as part of Australia's 2018-19 budget, and since then, both the Subclass 410 and Subclass 405 have been completely shut to new applicants. If you are coming to this information fresh in 2026, hoping to simply apply for a retirement visa the way you might have a decade ago, you will hit a wall almost immediately. There is no dedicated retirement visa available to new first-time applicants in Australia right now. None. That is not a bureaucratic loophole or a technicality. It is the reality of Australian immigration policy as it stands today, and it represents one of the most significant shifts in how the country manages its intake of older foreign residents. Now, before you close this video in despair, here is what you actually need to hear. The door is not locked forever, and for many retirees, particularly those with family connections to Australia, there are very real and very viable pathways that can get you to the sun-soaked retirement you have been imagining. But they require planning, they require patience, and they require money. In some cases, a significant amount of it. So let us walk through each option carefully, because the right pathway for you depends entirely on your personal circumstances. The most realistic route for many expats who want to retire in Australia in 2026 is what is known as the Parent Visa Program. If you have a child who is an Australian citizen, a permanent resident, or an eligible New Zealand citizen living in Australia, then you may be able to join them through one of the parent visa subclasses. And this is where the options multiply quickly, because there is not just one parent visa. There are several, each with its own processing time, cost structure, and conditions. Understanding which one suits you is absolutely critical. The Contributory Parent Visa, Subclass 143, is widely considered the fastest realistic route to permanent residency through the parent pathway. The word contributory is key here. It refers to the substantial government fee that applicants must pay, which exists to offset the projected cost of future healthcare usage. In 2026, The cost for the primary applicant sits at over 48,000 Australian dollars, and processing time is currently running at approximately 5 to 7 years for new applications. That is not a typo. 5 to 7 years. Australia's parent visa queue is famously long, and while that sounds daunting, the reward at the end is genuine permanent residency, the right to live, work, or volunteer in Australia, and access Medicare after certain waiting periods. For retirees who have the financial resources and the time to wait, this is often the most strategic long-term play. For parents who are already on Australian soil, perhaps visiting on a tourist visa, the Contributory Aged Parent Visa, subclass 864, offers a similar permanent residency outcome but is lodged onshore rather than offshore. This visa is specifically designed for parents who have reached retirement age under Australian law, 65 or older for men, 60 or older for women, and who want to remain in Australia on a bridging visa while their application is processed. The costs are similarly high, exceeding 48,000 Australian dollars per applicant in 2026, and the processing time for new applications stretches to 12 or more years. It is a long game, but for those already in the country and unwilling to leave, it provides a legal way to stay. Then there is the non-contributory parent visa, subclass 103, which costs significantly less, around 7,345 Australian dollars, but comes with a processing time that is frankly staggering. Current estimates for new applicants put the wait at around 30 years. 30. That is not a viable retirement plan for anyone currently in their 50s or 60s. The subclass 103 exists on paper, but in practice, it is not a meaningful option for today's retirees. What is a meaningful option, and one that is attracting a great deal of attention right now, is the Sponsored Parent Temporary Visa, subclass 870. This visa is different in character from the permanent parent visas. It is temporary, but it is fast, relatively affordable, and it gets you into the country quickly. Under the subclass 870, a parent can be sponsored by their child in Australia to live there for up to 3 or 5 years initially, with the possibility of renewal, giving a maximum total stay of 10 years. The processing time runs at roughly 7 to 8 months, making it dramatically quicker than any permanent option. The cost in 2026 is 5,735 Australian dollars for a 3-year grant, or 11,470 Australian dollars for a 5-year grant per applicant. There are important conditions attached. You cannot work on this visa, you must maintain private health insurance for the duration of your stay, and dependents cannot be included in your application. But for retirees who want to start living in Australia now while a permanent application works its way through the queue, the subclass 870 is often described as the essential bridge. And here is the strategic insight that many immigration advisors are currently recommending. You can hold a subclass 870 while simultaneously having a permanent contributory parent visa application lodged and pending. This means you can actually be living in Australia, watching the sunsets, exploring the country, spending time with your family, all while waiting for the permanent visa to come through. That combination of the 870 as a bridge and the 143 as the long-term goal is rapidly becoming the favored dual-track approach for financially prepared retirees with children in Australia. Now, what about those who held the old subclass 405 or 410 retirement visas? This is where things get genuinely interesting, because the Australian government, recognizing that it had essentially pulled the rug out from under a cohort of retirees who had built their lives in the country, created a special pathway to permanent residency specifically for them. If you held a subclass 410 or 405 visa, or if your last substantive visa was one of those two, and you had not held any other substantive visa since 8th May 2018, and you are in Australia when you apply, you may be eligible for this dedicated retirement visa pathway. It allows eligible former holders to apply for a parent visa without needing to meet the sponsorship requirement, the balance of family test, or the assurance of support requirements that normally apply. That is a significant concession, and it represents a genuine lifeline for long-term retirees who might not have had Australian children in the conventional sense of the sponsorship rules. If you or someone you know is in this situation, this pathway is one of the most important pieces of immigration news to come out of Australia in recent years. For those without children in Australia, and there are many, the options become considerably more challenging. Australia does not currently offer an investor or wealth-based retirement visa that is open to new applicants, despite occasional discussion in policy circles about creating one. The Business Innovation and Investment Program, which some retirees had hoped to use as an alternative route, was shut down entirely in July 2024. That means there is no straightforward financial pathway for a wealthy retiree without family ties to simply invest their way into Australian residency. Partner visas remain an option if you have an Australian spouse or de facto partner, and these can lead to permanent residency in their own right. But for the solo retiree or the couple without Australian connections, the honest answer is that Australia is a difficult destination right now, and professional immigration advice is not optional. It is essential. Let us talk about the financial realities of retiring in Australia, because the visa is only part of the equation. Once you have secured your right to be there, you need to fund your life, and Australia is not a cheap country. According to the Association of Superannuation Funds of Australia, a comfortable retirement for a homeowner aged between 65 and 84 costs around $73,875 Australian dollars per year for a couple and approximately $52,383 Australian dollars per year for a single person. These figures include living expenses, healthcare costs, groceries, leisure activities, and housing. A more modest lifestyle brings those numbers down to around $47,475 Australian dollars for couples and $32,930 Australian dollars for singles annually. But these figures assume you already own your home outright. If you are renting, the numbers climb quickly. Rental rates in Australia's capital cities are hovering around 2,900 Australian dollars per month, with a nationwide average closer to 1,800 Australian dollars per month. Healthcare is one of the most important considerations for any retiree, and in Australia, the situation for expats is nuanced. Australia's healthcare system consistently ranks among the best in the world, with a quality index of 93 out of 100. But access to Medicare, the public health system, is not automatically available to all visa holders. Permanent residents can generally access Medicare, but temporary visa holders, including those on the subclass 870 sponsored parent visa, are required to hold private health insurance for the duration of their stay. The cost of private health insurance for retirees varies significantly depending on age, the level of cover chosen, and the insurer, but premiums typically range from 2,000 Australian dollars to 5,000 Australian dollars per year for individual cover. Additionally, under the Department of Home Affairs minimum cover standards, health insurance policies for certain visa holders must provide at least 1 million Australian dollars in benefits per person per year. This is not a small consideration, and it needs to be factored into your financial planning from day one. Tax is another dimension that catches many expats off guard. Australia taxes residents on their worldwide income, which means that if you are an Australian tax resident, your pensions, investment returns, and any income from overseas will all need to be declared and may be subject to Australian tax. For income below 90,000 Australian dollars, foreign residents face a tax rate of 32.5%, with rates rising for higher brackets. If you are American, the situation is even more complex. The United States taxes its citizens on worldwide income regardless of where they live, which means you could find yourself navigating two tax systems simultaneously. Tax treaties between Australia and other countries can help reduce double taxation, but the details vary significantly by country of origin, and understanding your position before you move is not a luxury, it is a necessity. Professional cross-border tax advice is money extremely well spent before you make any financial decisions related to an Australian retirement. Let us talk for a moment about where in Australia you might want to land, because the country is vast, and the choice of city or region will shape your daily life profoundly. Sydney is iconic, the harbour, the beaches, the opera house, but it is also the most expensive city in the country, with property prices and rental costs that reflect its global profile. Melbourne offers arts, culture, world-class cuisine, and a more temperate climate, and it consistently ranks among the world's most livable cities. Brisbane has been attracting enormous attention in recent years, with its warm, subtropical climate, outdoor lifestyle, and growing infrastructure making it increasingly popular among retirees. Perth on the west coast offers something different again, a more relaxed pace, spectacular natural surroundings, and a slightly lower cost of living than Sydney or Melbourne. For those willing to look beyond the major cities, regional areas offer significantly lower living costs, stunning natural beauty, and in some cases, state government visa nomination pathways that can open additional immigration options. South Australia, for example, continues to play an active role in the subclass 405 renewal program for existing holders, requiring those applicants to commit to South Australia as their primary residence and maintain net assets of at least 250,000 Australian dollars invested in state government bonds for 4 years. The question of timing is one that many would-be retirees wrestle with, and the honest answer is that earlier is almost always better when it comes to Australian immigration. The processing queues for permanent parent visas are long and getting longer. The points-based skilled migration system has become more competitive, with higher benchmarks now required for qualifications, work history, and English proficiency. Net overseas migration is being carefully managed to address population pressure, and the overall tone of Australia's immigration policy in 2026 reflects a country that is being thoughtful and selective about who it welcomes as long-term residents. That does not mean it is closed, far from it, but it does mean that the window of opportunity rewards those who plan carefully and act decisively. There is one more thing worth saying as we bring this all together, and it is perhaps the most important thing of all. The rules around Australian immigration are complex, they change, and the consequences of getting them wrong can be severe, from visa cancellation to lengthy bans on reapplying. The information in this video is accurate to the best of our research in 2026, but immigration law is a living, evolving area, and your specific circumstances will determine which pathways are available to you. A registered migration agent or immigration lawyer with current, up-to-date knowledge of Australian immigration policy is not just a helpful resource. For anyone seriously pursuing an Australian retirement, they are an essential part of the process. Many offer initial consultations at accessible price points, and the investment in professional guidance can save you years of costly mistakes. Australia remains one of the most desirable retirement destinations on Earth, and for good reason. The quality of life, the natural beauty, the healthcare system, and the cultural warmth are real and remarkable. But the pathway to retiring there in 2026 looks nothing like it did 15 years ago, and pretending otherwise is a disservice to anyone who is genuinely planning for this. The dedicated retirement visas are gone for new applicants. The investor pathway closed. What remains is a set of family-based routes that reward patience, financial preparation, and smart strategic planning. If you have children in Australia, you have options. And with the right approach, you can be living your Australian retirement dream sooner than you might think. If you do not, the road is harder, but it is not impossible. And keeping a close eye on policy developments is worthwhile, because this is a space that continues to evolve. The sun is still shining in Australia, the beaches are still there, the coffee is still excellent. Your job right now is to understand the rules of the game as they actually exist, build your plan around them, and take the first step. Whether that is consulting a migration agent, researching which parent visa subclass suits your family situation, or simply getting clear on your finances, every step you take today puts you closer to the retirement you have been dreaming about. Australia is worth the effort. It just requires you to know what you are walking into, and now you do.